Okay, we're gonna finish up episode 6 of Druk Season 3. I mentioned it in the first part, but I just want to mention again that this episode is heavy as hell. I'm going to be talking a lot about depression and substance abuse. I want to make sure I put that out there, so take care of yourselves. I will leave some links and resources in the description if you need to talk to someone, if you need help, if you're worried about yourself or someone around you. So let's get into the episode. So, like I said before, I think you can split this episode up based on the mental health journey, I guess, that Mateo goes through. I think in the first 2 clips, we're still watching him descend. Somehow he's still not in his worst place. And then the 2 middle clips, this one being the first, are him at his lowest. I think these are the moments where we see Mateo at his most vulnerable. And then the last 3 clips are the beginning of his ascent. He's starting to kind of come back and starting to feel a bit more hope. This is the first of his most vulnerable. I love this clip. These next 2 clips are some of my favorite clips in all of Druk. Oh, I love this song too. It's so aggressive and it works so well coming off of the last clip. You can feel that aggression and that anger and that angst. Oh god, and he looks so bad. He looks so bad here. He looks even worse than he did at the beginning of the episode, which is further proof that the beginning of the episode is not his worst point. His hair is so greasy. He's still smoking. He's been smoking in every single clip so far. His eyes are all like puffy and red, which could either be from the weed, from crying, from not sleeping, a combination. His skin looks really pale. He looks gaunt. He's got like dark circles under his eyes too. Just, oof, God. But Hannah is here. Never fear. Hannah is here. She's also the first one to hug Mateo. Like, maybe Yunas and Carlos and Abdi hugged him when they came in, but we didn't see it. The camera didn't let us see it. Hannah, though, hugs Mateo. And I think that's a nice touch. They're about to open up. Some shit is about to be said. It's about to get real and vulnerable. Unlike the past 2 clips. That has been Mateo pushing and pushing and pushing. And not allowing himself to be vulnerable or open with anyone. But here, he's gonna open up a little bit. I love how you see Mateo hesitate before he goes into the kitchen to sit with Hannah. He looks back down the hallway and you can see him kind of contemplate, oh fuck, should I just go back? Should I just escape? Should I try to make up some kind of excuse? Should I blow up on Hannah and, make her pissed off at me so she'll leave? Even with all of that, he decides, no, I think I'll sit with Hannah. Which is really interesting. We saw Amira kind of leave him hanging because he was a shitty study buddy to her, He tried to get her to stay, but he really brought that one on himself. And then we saw him really, really aggressively isolate himself from the guys. But with Hannah, he decides to stay put and he decides to humor her and sit with her. And I think there could be a lot of reasons for that. They have so much complicated history between one another, and I think Mateo might feel like he owes it to her to not be a dick to her. I don't think he has it in him to blow up on Hannah and to say some horrible shit to her to get her to leave, And whether that's because he feels indebted to her or because he just looks and probably feels really fucking tired from how shitty this week has been, either way, I think it's really sweet that this is the one conversation that he has with someone else in which he is vulnerable and he doesn't push them away. I love this conversation so much. I really do. I feel like this is such an underrated clip. And I love it. He immediately leans on his hands. He can't keep his body weight up. He's just so fucking tired, and his body language really, really portrays that. God, you can really see how red his eyes are here. And it's not like the whites of his eyes even. It's just like the outside of them, which I think isn't just from the weed. I think it's from not sleeping and crying too.
Long time no see.
Ugh, I love her. She just radiates so much warmth. You can see how worried Hannah is. I'm gonna pause pretty much every time Mateo says something, because literally every piece of dialogue that he has is either another symptom of depression or is just so complex that I really need to talk about it. And I think this is a really underrated scene for Michelangelo as well. I think he does a beautiful job of playing this. He gets every little beat so perfect. There's so much here, so much, so many different emotions. But back to the point. He says, yeah, maybe, and he like smiles a little bit. He does like that tight-lipped smile. And I think this is him trying to make light of how bad it actually is. He's still trying to avoid it and make Hannah believe that it's not actually that bad. It could be that, or also that he doesn't want to accept it himself either. I think it's probably a combination of those two. He doesn't want to worry Hannah, but he's also not ready to accept how bad it actually is. And once again, I do think it is this bad because of an underlying mental health issue. Even though all of the Isaacs have a rough time in this episode, show me an Isaac who looks this bad. Show me an Isaac who says the things that Mateo says in this conversation. You can't. You just can't. Even though all of the Isaacs have it rough in episode 6, because of Mateo's underlying depression and probably anxiety and probably other things too, he expresses it in a much more intense way. And he also expresses it through pretty severe substance abuse, I would say. Just putting that out there again. And I love, oh my god, I'm gonna stop at literally everything that Mickey does, because even though he does try to make light of the situation there, you can see his eyes go blank again. Oh my god, dude. It's like, even though he was trying to make light of it and be kind of funny about it, he still can't keep up that act anymore. I think a reason why he's so vulnerable in this scene is not only because it's Hannah, but also just because he's so tired and he can't put up the act anymore. Like, he literally is too tired to pretend like he's okay at this point. Oh my god. Okay. So he says really, and he's like so shocked. He's genuinely shocked that Hannah would say that she misses him. This clip really shows the sense of worthlessness that Mateo feels for himself. There's guilt, there's worthlessness, pessimism, hopelessness. All of that is in this specific clip. And in every piece of dialogue that Mateo says, in every facial expression, you can see all of that. And surprise, surprise, those are all symptoms of depression. The last two clips focused more on the angry side of Mateo. But this clip and the next one, like I said, he's at his lowest point and he's fucking tired. He can't even like muster up the energy to be angry anymore. It really shows the more sad and hopeless side of Mateo, which is also caused by his depression. And he understands why Hannah wouldn't want to be around him, partially because he doesn't want to be around himself. And this really highlights how low Mateo's self-worth has gotten. And it's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. I love that moment too. In the last clip, we saw him use so many questions as a way to deflect the guys' questions that were about him. And he was saying like, oh, how was the German exam? Oh, how should I feel? You know, he wouldn't answer any of their questions with any answers. He would just ask even more questions. And that was a defense mechanism, right? But here, it doesn't feel like that. It feels so genuine. It feels like he really just wants to know how Hannah is doing. This doesn't feel like it has any ulterior motive. It really feels like he cares how she's doing. And that he feels responsible if she feels like shit and if she's pining over Jonas, because he had a hand in breaking them up. Even if they would have broken up anyway, he still had a part in that and in that pain. you can really, really, really tell that he still feels an immense amount of guilt over it. And I said before that I think Mateo is a really caring person, and I think this shows that. Even when he's struggling so much, he still wants to know how she's doing. And I love that. I really do. I also like how, even though he's trying really hard, and I do think he genuinely cares about Hannah right now, his eyes still kind of drift because he's so fucking tired. And also high. Of course, when is he not high at this point? Which is not something to laugh about. It's like actually substance abuse, and I do think it's very important to talk about how Druck doesn't really address that properly. That's a conversation for later, I think. I think I'll talk about that more in the next part, so let's just keep going. And because Mateo immediately assumes that Hannah feels like shit because of Jonas, he's taking it personally, like, oh, fuck, that's my fault. That is my fault. And that's the first thing his mind goes to. And I think another reason why this conversation is so genuine and so different from the conversations we've seen Mateo have with other people in this episode is because Hannah and Mateo are very similar. They both feel stuck for different reasons, but in general, neither one of them really has a clear vision of their future. Mateo's is complicated further by mental health issues, and I don't think Hannah has any of that. But she still doesn't know what she's doing with her life, and she still feels that that pressure, just like Mateo. So there is real empathy between the two of them. I think that gives Mateo more room to be able to be vulnerable with her. It's so beautiful. I love their friendship. It's very complex.
Ich weiß gar nicht, was mit dir los ist.
The camera pushes in so much there. You get this really close-up shot of Mateo. And when he says, I don't know, his voice cracks, and it's just... Oh. You can really see that he's fighting back tears here. He clears his throat. He's kind of like pushing his tongue against his mouth and blinking a bunch to try to fight back tears. And then the camera pulls back again to show that Mateo has pulled back, which is super cool camera work. And he says, I'm really just an asshole. He says it so matter-of-factly, like it's common knowledge. And that's probably because it is common knowledge to him. He's probably been saying things like this to himself for a long time now. And it's also what Sarah called him. She called him an asshole in her fantastic Instagram post. So he definitely took it to heart, and he's using it against himself, which is absolutely what someone with anxiety and depression would do. Take one comment and then use it to just completely barrage themselves with hatred and negative comments. And this really is another thing that depressed people often do. There's a cognitive distortion called all or nothing thinking. And what that distortion does is that it makes someone with depression be convinced of these blanket statements that don't allow for any growth. Like him saying, I'm really just an asshole, makes it seem like he could never be anything better. He is an asshole, and that's it. There's no room for him to grow. This is who he is to his core. That is an all or nothing statement. That is a blanket statement about himself that is caused by this cognitive distortion. That is a symptom of depression. It makes it seem like there's no way for him to ever change and that he's just stuck like this forever. And that's probably how he feels right now. No, that is absolutely how he feels right now. And he also says this right after he almost cries, which is another way of him trying to make light of the situation and kind of joke around a little bit. Like, this is just the way it is. I'm really just an asshole. Whatever. And then after things get a little bit too heavy, his immediate instinct is to self-medicate again. Right after he almost cries, right after he almost lets himself kind of open up to Hannah in a deeper way, he immediately goes for the joint. This is literally textbook substance abuse. And the way he talks about the weed, too, is also textbook substance abuse. How it makes it more bearable. And that look he gives, it looks like he's almost disgusted with himself and what he's doing. He knows it's wrong, but it makes it more bearable, so fuck it. He doesn't see another option for himself. This is the only thing that makes this situation more bearable. Dude, ugh, God. Hope everyone's doing okay. If you're struggling with substance abuse, if you're struggling with depression, please, please, please go talk to someone about it. These times are rough, y'all. Take care of yourself, seriously. But we're gonna end on a high note, or at least a slightly higher note. He puts the joint out, the Hannah effect in full force. He doesn't put the joint down for his sake, but he does put it down for her sake, which is something. It's better than nothing, I guess. And he smiles a little bit. Oh, God. Oh, my God. That clip, you guys. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So in this clip, we actually see Mateo alone in the entire clip. This is the first time we've seen that in this episode. In the first clip, we saw him with Amira. In the second clip, we saw him with the guys. Third clip, we saw him with Hannah. But now, he is on his own. We're seeing him alone, fully, for the first time in this episode. And I also mentioned how this is the other clip where I think Mateo is at his lowest point. So, it's about to get real sad. This is such an underrated clip, in my opinion. I think the last clip was also underrated. But this one, this one hits. It really does. And part of the reason why it hits so hard is this song. So before we hurt ourselves by looking at what Mateo is actually doing here, I want to talk about the song. It is another Tom Rosenthal song. I talked about Tom Rosenthal way at the beginning of the season. He showed up in the very first episode with his song, How Have You Been? And that was like the very first song that I talked about in this series. And he shows up again here, also at a very vulnerable point for Mateo. And this song is called Hugging You. It's also featuring Billy Martin, and holy shit. You took all the lonely days and you made them sing. You turned off the alarms so they don't ring. I don't know where we are in the grand scheme of things, but I just want to be hugging you tonight. Life did throw everything that it could throw. Your face in the morning, it just glowed. Let's get in this car, let's face the sky and go. I just want to be counting stars with you. So I definitely think that these lyrics describe Mateo thinking about David right now. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know where they stand, but he just wants to be with him. And focusing specifically on hugging him is, I think, really characteristic of Mateo because he is very physical. He craves a lot of physical affection and intimacy. So I really love that this song specifically says hugging you. And then it also goes on to talk about wanting to kind of drive away and count stars, which running away is also a huge theme with Mateo and David. So this song is just so beautiful and really, really fits the atmosphere. Very melancholy. I also just want to note really quickly, this is a super small detail, but I love that sticker in the corner of his box that says, "What were you thinking?" I don't know if that's like a reference to anything, but sounds like anxiety to me. Just saying. So I've joked before about Mateo doing things that I thought were really relatable, but on a serious note, this is the most relatable thing that Mateo has ever done. And to me, this is another clear sign of depression. Looking back at pictures of himself and kind of scoffing at them, to me, this all reads, what the fuck went wrong? You know, who is that person in those pictures? I don't recognize him. And that's what I think Mateo is thinking right now. It's what I think is going through his head. He feels like a stranger to himself, and that is absolutely something that someone with depression would think. He's looking at pictures of himself smiling and being carefree and happy-go-lucky, and he's like, what the fuck happened to that smiling kid? And I know you could also say that he thinks he's a stranger because that kid also didn't know he was gay, but I think it's probably both. Mateo feels like a stranger to himself, probably because of his identity crisis, but also because of his depression. He barely recognizes himself as that happy-go-lucky, smiling, heteronormative, normal kid. And the camera slowly pushes in too. As he keeps looking at the pictures, it just keeps pushing in more and more. And it finally settles on a pretty close-up shot of Mateo looking really, really close to tears, but then stopping and pretty urgently putting everything away. And then we're back to this far away shot. This is the same thing that they did in the last clip, where we would pull in on Mateo and it would feel like, you know, he's about to open up, he's about to let himself feel what he needs to be feeling, but then we're back to another far away shot. So he's not allowing himself to feel that, even when he's alone. And we, as the audience, also aren't allowed to get that close to Mateo. I really love that camera work. And because he's been hit with all of these really heavy feelings, just like in the last clip, he goes to self-medicate again, which is more textbook substance abuse that Druck does not properly address. And he gets desperate and restless when he can't find weed, which is definitely even more evidence of like a really deep problem. He immediately contacts his dealer to see when he can get more. Okay, and I know the music coupled with him putting on those sunglasses seems like a really comedic moment, but I'm pretty sure he puts those glasses on because his eyes are hypersensitive to the light because of how much he's been smoking. And it's probably proved by the fact that he like rubs his eyes before he puts them on. So yes, it is funny, but there's like a reason why he does it. Ooh. And that transition is so blunt. And you get that really loud and sudden train movement and sound as well. I talked about trains in the last episode being used, and I think they're also used in this episode in a really cool way. So this clip is at 10:13 a.m. when the dealer said his business hours opened at 10. So Mateo has wasted pretty much no time in getting to the dealer. And I think the train racing by really symbolizes that urgency that he is feeling right now, the kind of panic that he doesn't have weed, he doesn't have drugs to make this pain more bearable. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about for this part. I'll see you on Saturday to finish up the episode. Thanks for watching.